Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Esports Weekly. I know, now back on its regular time on a Wednesday where it belongs. And today we have, again, another very interesting day for you coming through. We're going to be talking a little bit about the console meta and how either it is kind of different, but not quite as much as it used to be from what we used to see in the console league. We'll be talking a little bit about the games that we've seen the past couple weeks in the minor league, as well as the games we got to see last week in the Premier League. And we have an interview with Diggy Dog that is going to be coming through. I'm really excited to talk to him because he was one of the first Australian players in the league, now joined by his counterparts that were on Kanga. I'm kind of interested to see how he feels that he has to play up against them. And all of that's going to be coming in a little bit later. The first thing that we are going to be covering is, of course, going to be the console league, as we do every single week. And there is no one who will be better to talk to me about that than Dave Olsen. I wonder what the Dolson stands for.
It's not what you would think it is.
It isn't Dave Olsen. It's just
certainly not
something completely different.
It's absolutely that. Actually, we won't go too deep into the backstory, but on my old sports team, we had 3 Davids, so it became Dolson, Dwiddles, and D'Lo for all 3 of us. So that's a little fun background
as to where the origin of the name.
Yes, exactly.
Itself. It's a lot more interesting than mine. Well, maybe not. I don't know. It's a solid backstory.
It is a solid
If it was
backstory.
a comic book, I'd be like, you know what, that was pretty good. I'll read issue 2, see where that goes.
That's fair.
But you wanted to talk about this
Yes.
week, the console meta. And the reason I think this is an interesting conversation is because a year ago, that would have been like, cool, so there's no Drogos, there's no Bomb King.
Right.
People are playing Sky and Victor, and they don't touch like certain champions that you see on PC all the time. Now, it almost lines up. There's still a couple of things that are a little like fringier and a little different, especially in terms of priority, but a lot of things are lining up.
Yeah, so there's kind of 3 different ways to look at it. I would say the 3 kind of champions we'll talk about today is sort of the tried and true, the ones who we've seen numerous times throughout the season. Those are your hit scan-esque type champions. You got Victor, you got Vivian, you got Tyra. They're kind of in that that main block. You got Genos sort of in that middle, just now kind of coming into it, not as tried and true per se, but sort of coming into the meta. We saw him a lot this last week. And then a fringe pick in Sky, who throughout the season has been picked here and there, but has started to make her way in a little bit. Still would consider her a fringe pick, not really part of the actual meta, but someone that we've seen some success on.
And, I mean, just going, I guess, right to the first one that you had talked about, kind of talking about the tried and true, this is, you know, your hit scans, your Victor, as you had mentioned, but also kind of including your Vivian and your Tyra, like the ones that are going to be a little bit more familiar feeling on a controller.
And that's exactly what it is with that block of champions. You have a champion like Victor, you have somebody like Atomic AMK, we talk about Good Lad, and we talk about Prosper Logic all the time, these guys who can really make this champion work. And it's interesting in that they're versatile, but they have a lot of straightforward damage. I'm going to quiz you just really quick.
I was not prepared for this part.
And a lot of this is thanks to Blue on Twitter, so props to him for gathering a lot of these stats. Of the 105 maps that have been played in the PCL, what percentage would you say Victor has appeared in one of those maps?
I'm going to say like 86%.
75%.
Okay.
So right in the ballpark. He has a 52 win percentage hovering around there. The interesting fact, though, is Tyra is up at like a 71% win percentage. So somebody who's found a lot of success, and she actually kind of fits into this next category. I mean, she's seeing a lot more play in that the hunting party talent is something that we've seen selected a lot more, sort of for the same reason that Genos has been, in that it applies a lot of team buffs, in the sense that you mark somebody and they do more damage to them. As simple as that. So sort of that hit scan main meta are those 3 tried and trues.
Yeah.
Don't expect to see that changing around too much.
But Tyra, like you said, kind of double dipping. Genos is one that, for a long time, like if you roll back a year ago, you have a lot of Genos coming through. You look at maybe Fnatic in the PPL, again, trying to run those triple DPS. That's where we first started to see it, and then he fell off again. The triple DPS meta kind of disappeared with a couple of changes, and then they changed the ways heal works just slightly enough that it's going to give a little more upfront healing for some of those lower health champions. So if you're an EV, it's not 10% of your 1,800. It's now going to be 300 flat that you're getting back.
Exactly.
And with that, Luminary has kind of scooped right back in.
He has, and it's somebody who we've seen with a decent play rate so far in this season, but we've seen a lot more play of him in the PPL. Obviously, these replays are of different champions, but just kind of showing with that Luminary buff how much damage literally anyone can do, and I think that's why he's starting to get so much more play, especially in the console league as well. Everyone really, from console league, PPL, everyone's really picking up on Genos, and if you look at kind of how he's run, you get the Luminary buff, which is 15% more damage. You run Astral Cycle, which increases the duration of that buff.
Yeah.
You run Retrograde, which reduces the cooldown to put that buff on more allies.
Yep.
And then you run Light Years as well, which increases the range that you're able to put that buff on allies. And it's really a no-brainer in the sense that that's such an easy kit to run. I'm not saying that it's an easy champion to play per se, but when all you have to do is drop that mark on somebody and just by default they do more damage, he fits into not literally, most lineups,
literally.
almost literally every lineup. But you put him on a Bomb King, and that Bomb King is doing. He's 2-tapping carries, whereas it might take 3 or 4 bombs instead. And
yeah.
I'm excited to see how much more Genos kind of plays into the lineups, but I see his pick rate and his play rate skyrocketing over the next few weeks.
And a fun fact for you, if you do play Genos, you run all the cards he mentioned, start buying Chronos, eventually you can hit 3 people. I think you can keep the Astral Mark up on.
Yeah.
Originally, that can go up to 4. You can have almost all of your teammates healed up.
Seems
and
a little
you'll
unfair.
feel really, really comfortable if you get it.
Definitely.
It does play with time, but that's something that you have to kind of figure out for yourself if you're out there playing the Genos. The next one on the list, and again, you had mentioned her as a fringe pick earlier, it's Skye, who, again, I feel like in console is still a little bit more tracking-based because of the fact that they're going to have a little bit heavier aim assist, but also you have to just give shout-outs to Debilitate being a really, really good talent against tanky champions.
And that's really what it is Skye is so successful into really tanky lineups, and I think we saw her, I guess it was in 2 of the 4 sets this week. She kind of came out, really caught some teams off guard in the PCL at least. Slopodopoulos really playing her to a T, and it's such an interesting mix where it's like by default she does so much damage anyway, but kind of the unspoken is that she can turn she turns everyone's heads. Like, all right, we got a Skye behind us, we have to deal with her. I get hit by Debilitate, immediately 50+% of my health is gone. Poison bolts, they stop your ammo from being consumed for a few seconds. If you're running Decrepify on that kit as well. I mean, there's so many different things that go into a Skye kit that actually make her, I think, a really interesting choice. And we touched on this when we were on the desk after, I think, that game. And that's, she's not a guaranteed pick every single time. I think she has to kind of fit into the proper lineup. She works well on something like Bright March. She works well into very tanky lineup. She can shred tanks very easily, and she really fits into kind of a different niche. Right now, she has about a 14% pick rate, I guess, out of all the games we saw. She's been in about 14% of them, which is obviously on the lower end, but she's won like 67% of them. So, I mean, if you're winning 2/3 of the games that you're in, again, they're probably picking it in a situation where they're like, all right, we know this Skye can work. We know that she can shred the Makoa. She can shred the Inara. She can cause a ruckus in the back line. And I think she'll remain a fringe pick. Not going to become like really into the meta.
Yeah.
But somebody, I think when you see her, it's not guaranteed, but very likely that it'll work out.
And I think a good little footnote, if you were watching those clips earlier, is that those weren't sped up or anything. Like, she really does eat through tank health bars that fast. That is what she does strongest. And if we were watching the update notes, I think last week, actually, that was a discussion about Debilitate. It's actually getting brought down 5% in the future. But, I mean, 25% of your health getting shredded. Still a lot of health to go through.
It's tough to deal with.
But we do have a couple of matchups next week that we're looking forward to. The first one that you kind of were hinting at, and I think this is going to be a very interesting one, is Cyclone versus Bust Down.
Yeah, and we'll touch on this again in a minute with sort of these number 2 teams swirling around. But I think Bust Down, we've kind of said this over the past few weeks, they're actually a lineup that in the games, in these segments, pretty much each week we've said, all right, Bust Down is kind of the team to watch. They're 4-1. And 5-0 is Cyclone right above them, and that's one of the closer 2 teams we see in the different regions.
Yeah.
I think as far as closeness between 1 and 2, Bust Down is kind of the team to look at. They're playing really well right now. They're certainly not in a region that is just a gimme region where you can go in every week and expect to win all your games. So being 4-1 in a region like they have, I think is really interesting. I think Cyclone will still pull it out this week, but I think that it's going to actually be a very close lineup. I think Bust Down has a pretty good shot of taking this one to 5 games.
And that's actually one of the things, as you were looking at it. I mean, last week I think we were talking about all the number ones. The week before we were talking about how really we had seen one region where it was like, oh man, the most interesting thing about, I think it's NAPS4, is that Invictus and Heating Up are so close together, at least at the time they were. Which one's going to be able to come out on land? And for this week, you're coming into this is just whether or not are these number 1 teams as safe as they have been in the past.
And I think it's sort of a yes and no in some regions. I mean, you look at EUPS4, where Flashpoint is on top of that region. iTech is the number 2 team, but Flashpoint's 3-0'd them 2 times in a row. Stush is the only team that's taken a map off of Flashpoint, and it was a really big win for them. So I would never call any of these regions like locked in place. I mean, there's such a long season that anything can happen. Enough changes. You see how Heating Up's doing. They're catching up as well. So I would never say that this is all done. There's no catching up for any of these teams. I would say Flashpoint will stay out in front. Invictus and Heating Up is something you have to watch now. Both teams have 3-0'd one another at some point in this season. But Heating Up is the one with the momentum right now. So technically Invictus is the number 2 team despite being number 1 for the 4 weeks until they just played this last week. So that's kind of the matchup to watch. I think Elevate is heads above everyone else. I don't think the number 2 team, I don't think Cats on Mars in their region is going to catch up to them. But still an interesting season to watch. Any given Monday, anyone could win.
Well, hey, there's still I think 7 or 8 weeks left of competition for them, and so when you have that longevity in the scene, you know that there's going to be things that could cause some upsets.
Definitely.
And speaking of upsets, we actually got to speak of a match that's going to have and kind of get everyone's opinion on who will win it. Unfortunately, I don't think this one was actually an upset. Everyone tends to lean one way. It's Aaron Manor versus iTech, and everyone's coming up iTech.
Yeah, so iTech is obviously in Flashpoint's region, and it's interesting that it's I think Flashpoint is the number 1 team. They are the number 1 team, but they are the guys to beat. And then iTech is just behind them. I still think Flashpoint's better. But Aaron Monitor and iTech I still think are relatively close. I think that Aaron Monitor are sort of on the up and coming. They could pull some wins out. They could beat a team like iTech. I think, as we all saw, iTech will still win that one. But I think it'll be closer than a lot of people are assuming. Sure. I think that 2 and 3 battle is actually going to be pretty interesting in that region. But I think iTech will take it.
Well, I mean, I think everyone, I don't think. I know everyone agreed with you on that one. iTech is looking really good. And again, I think I said this during the desk this week where I was just like, if you take Flashpoint out of that equation, that region gets way more competitive.
Definitely.
Just because Flashpoint is almost always going to be a win. But I mean, Console League, things have been looking up. Next week we're going into week 6. A couple of these teams have been toppled. Invictus is no longer number 1, as you mentioned. Is there anything that you think for next week is going to be too outlandish, or do you think it's going to be not necessarily set in stone, but most of what you would expect?
Well, I think next week we look at sort of what we saw in the minor league this week, where there's a lot of 1 and 2s going against 3 and 4. So I think that they'll follow the storylines mostly. But actually looking back to our meta talk, that's kind of what I'm looking forward to this week kind of coming out. I expect maybe to see Sky 1 or 2 more times. I expect Genos to be an overwhelming pick in a lot of these matches. And pairing that Genos with the Tyra again is something interesting where we've seen it a few times. It's had some impact here and there. It's not been, tried and true, done and dusted sort of matchup. We saw Genos and Torvald in the minor league, and it was actually pretty tough for the other team. So I expect a lot of the storylines to continue to be followed, but it's such an interesting time where teams are reaching out willing to try something like a Sky. Maybe some other flanks are going to come out next week. So game-wise, I would expect them to follow the storyline, but I think meta-wise, we might still see some smaller, more intricate changes.
A little flavor, a little spice kind of added into
sprinkle it in there a little bit.
That's going to be coming through. But thank you so much, Dave, for coming through and talking to me about the Console League.
Every Wednesday.
It was an absolute pleasure. And every Wednesday. Every Monday at 11 a.m. is when you can watch the Console League, so you can see these games live when they are played. We do have 4 out of the 8 total matches that will come through, but of course, they're always the most interesting console matches that you can see, especially in Paladins, since they're the only console matches you'll see in Paladins. But the next subject we're going to be moving on to is going to be the Minor League. But before we can get there, we do have to take a quick little break. So we'll get to the Minor League just after this.
Hey everyone, Heroic Leap J Nash, Evil Mojo Alyssa, and Titan Isaiah here with some exciting news.
Crossplay and cross progression for Smite,
Paladins,
And Realm Royale is live.
players on PC, Xbox One, and Nintendo Switch can now play with and against each other.
and by linking your Xbox and Nintendo Switch accounts to a high-res account, you'll be able to enjoy all of your own content and account progress across 3 platforms.
Head over to my.highresstudios.com to link your accounts, and be sure to check out our crossplay and cross-progression FAQ at highresstudios.com/crossplay for more details. We'll continue to forge ahead.
On the battleground,
And in the realm.
Rated T for Teen.
Didn't even need to hit level 40.
It's dangerous to go alone. We should remain together.
All by colored graphics and despair.
Hey, look, it's Minor League. Nick's here. How you doing, dude?
About as quick as that little
About
dubstep intro. I like it. Quick and
I
clean
actually,
to the point.
The one thing that caught my eye throughout all of that, and I feel like I've seen it, but I never honed in on it, but that Bomb King in the Battle Bite ad,
Yeah.
when he's coming through the doors at Stone Keep, and like you see how big Victor is. It's like this giant Bomb King boss. And I want that in the realm.
That's how it feels like to play against Luminary Bomb King. That's pretty much what you're looking at.
And I mean, like, you know, it was funny because me and Dave, we were just talking about the meta, and we were kind of keeping it console specific, but I mean, Genos has been kind of, no matter the platform, really big right now.
This just in, damage amp is good. You like damage, you want to do more
Smiley
of
face.
it, pick Luminary Genos. It's that simple.
That's
It's a
good.
big part of it. He's so
The new
safe.
infomercial?
Yeah, he's so safe. Healing through the walls. Like you said, once you get rolling on Chronos, and if you have the right loadout, you can have that up to 3 people usually.
Yeah.
And, you know, that cherry on top style ult, where if you have something to set it up, great, because that's probably going to be a guaranteed kill for you. But if you have a really good Genos player who's consistently hitting those, fights just kind of end when those are hit.
And, you know, I know one of the things you wanted to talk about, which I think Genos came into a pretty big role, although it wasn't actually as big as I would say Vivian ended up being, was a set we got to watch at pretty much the end of yesterday, Bork coming through and showing a lot more signs of life than I think people had really expected. Again, I even got to say that I wrote down Bork 4-0ing somebody, and I never thought I'd get to write those numbers next to that name, at least for another few weeks.
I mean, it's great. I think when you're looking at this Bork squad, me and Dave predicted it, but kind of on a long shot, obviously, at this point, because they had just gotten their first win. They were going up against Nation of Power, who makes all these big roster changes this week and is going to be kind of feeling things out a little bit. On top of the fact that Nation of Power pick a very, very strange composition that isn't capable of doing too much damage, whereas you had Bork picking a composition that could do plenty of damage. And so it's kind of funny to watch. Bonus damage is sort of the thing right now. Vivian with her opportunity and chaos there from Bitey. You're looking at a lot of Hunting Party Tower. You're looking at the rise of Luminary Genos, and I think he really kind of hasn't hit full stride yet. I'll be very curious to see where he ends up going, if not being banned sometimes in the PPL.
True.
It seems like, to me, and I've frankly been saying this a little bit since the beginning, is that Grover doesn't really feel like when he gets through, it's over. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
He gets banned so often, and then you will see him make it through. It's not that strange to see Grover make it through. And then it's just like, okay, well, sometimes he loses. I mean, I don't really, sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. Sometimes, half the time, I'm like, I don't really like this composition with Grover.
Sure.
A lot of times he gets picked with a Nara, and I'm just like, I don't really see that. I don't see the light on that.
A lot of it's that positioning, too. I think I remember actually either having a death segment or a casting segment with you where we were looking at it, and it's just like, he's going to have to play so oddly on this map, and I think it was a Splitstone Quarry where it's like, this is the best place for you to come in as a Grover player and maybe try to hold over there, but it was just so jumbled up when it came through that it feels like he's maybe falling down the tier list a little bit further than some players are recognizing. But one of the things that went really well for Bork was Game 1 yesterday. Game 4, they looked pretty solid. But Games 2 and 3 were definitely all in Nation of Power's wheelhouse.
Definitely. This Nation of Power squad was a big one to look at coming into this week because they're the ones that seem to have sought this trade out with Stigma and Poison, adding those guys to that roster. In Game 1, we saw the clips from Bitey. They got out-weirded. Both drafts were not very standard, but Bork just seemed to get the better end. Bork seemed to just play around it a little bit better. And then when things got weird on the flip side, it was Nation of Power's Androxus, and then they even snuck a Torvald through, which is something that we really rarely get to see, especially on PC. When it comes through on console, it's almost always the Koga Torvald. In the PPL and the PML, it's a little bit more up in the air. Like, you can maybe run an Eevee with it. You can maybe run that Andro with it. Andro Torvald was, one of the very hype things. Zen Torvald was a very, very hype thing that a lot of people did last season as well. So seeing the Stigma's Andro come back out was very, very fun and very, very cool because he's not a character you really get to see otherwise, even if it's Torvald in the conversations. It's one of the first Torvald Andros we've seen, one of the first Andros we've seen kind of this whole season, and it was awesome to watch Stigma get to play it too because he's such a monster.
And as you had said, that was, kind of the most competitive match that we got to see yesterday. I think everything else before that was just 3-0, 3-0, 3-0.
It was, yeah.
Everything was done and dusted. Bork comes out with a 4-0, and it kind of blows everyone's mind. Then that game ends up only going to all 4 that they could play. Nation of Power end up taking it and kind of keeping themselves solidified up at the top as of right now, which leads us into the matchup we want to look at next week, which is, you're going to have Ferocity and Bork in North America, but Zenith is going to be the team taking on Nation of Power. And again, you roll this back to week 1, and I'm definitely leaning towards Zenith, but going into week 6, it's not quite the same way anymore.
And I'm still honestly not super sure. I went Nation of Power this matchup this week, but Zenith, I believe, adding Niju, they got him, so they're looking much stronger as well. So now it's almost like it's who wants to grind this out. Ozone I think is on Zenith now, if I'm not mistaken, and these guys can come in, they could have a really, really big impact, and it's just about who wants to come together as these 5 players and scrim it out right now. We know Ozone's a very kind of hungry player, sort of in and out of the minor league tier 2 scene, so I'm very curious to see kind of what happens with him this time around. This will be like his second almost victory lap.
Well, as you said, we did get to sit down. We talked to you as well as Evan and Dave to see who was going to win this matchup. And surprise, surprise, we all went Nation of Power. And I feel like it's just one of those things. Stigma was a player, again, coming into this split, I don't think I knew his name. But he's made sure I remember it, mainly because it was a Kinessa on Bright Marsh, but then he's just been really good after that. And they pick up Poison as well for this week, and they're going into next week with them. They're going to have a little bit more experience. Like, they're just going to be a powerhouse.
Yeah, they should be really, really strong. Right. They need to, and now they've had a week to kind of solidify, almost, be tested a little bit by Bork. See, like, what are the boundaries of what we can pick and do well on. In a bit more of a conventional matchup, I guess you could say, where the drafts aren't as weird. That's where Nation of Power has looked strongest, quite frankly, and that's why we talked a lot about last week's predictions. Bork need to kind of do that thing that they do, right? Make it a little bit weird, make it a little bit uncomfortable for this new roster, and they did do that in game number 1. But Nation of Power just weren't scared to also kind of get weird and throw curveballs and, pick Andros and stuff. But I really did enjoy that matchup yesterday between Bork and Nation of Power. I thought that was a lot of fun to watch. Much more entertaining than the other sets that day, but sometimes that's just kind of the way it goes.
Well, going into the minor league, I want to say, like, during the qualifiers, Europe looked like it was going to be the most competitive because it was just any team could take a game off of the other, and it seemed like 4 teams that were going to be solid. and they end up being more of a, okay, well, you're first, you're second, that can change. You're third, you're fourth, and maybe that can change, but you're kind of locked into your two halves.
Right.
North America
is
the one that seems a lot more jumbled. So, like, what are you looking forward for going into, like, next week and the rest of the split?
I think what North America has always kind of brought is a little bit more of a competitive Tier 2 scene with the PGS going back. They've always had a lot of depth there with those teams. A lot of trash talk, a lot of scrimming, a lot of just very taking it seriously for sure. And it's just harder to predict on the basis of seedings, right? I think aside from Clown Fiesta Sour Team kind of going back and forth this season, it has been traditionally very easy in Europe and even CIS to be like, the 1 seed's going to win. The 2 seed is going to lose to them, but they will beat number 3. Number 3 will lose to 2 and 1, but they will beat 4. And it was like you could just literally bet on the seedings every single week, and you would never be wrong. And I don't think that's going to be the case in North America, and I think that makes things more entertaining to watch as we go forward.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a very interesting split. Again, 7 or 8 weeks, I think, still left for this as well as the console league. So both of these regions and both of these leagues are going to have plenty of room to grow and try to change things out. I think I'm keeping my eye on Bork more than anyone because I feel like they're going to have the most growth, but we'll have to see what that's like at the end of the split. Again, thank you for joining me on Esports Weekly, talking about the minor league and breaking down this week's matchups. But we're going to be going in towards kind of the later half of the show, so I'm going to be talking a little bit. The reason this episode is titled The Grind, we'll have an interview with Diggy Dog, and then we're going to go into the PPL. But before all of that, again, we're going to have to get to a quick break, so stay tuned, and we'll be right back.
Our time is short. Our days counted. These tales of the past, they tell of our hubris. Of victory at all costs. Of unleashing forces we could not control. The darkness has conquered all. This realm is lost. I must return. I must change what was. I am our last hope.
And I still get the different music. It makes me feel happy about it. But hey, welcome back to Esports Weekly. And again, I was mentioning earlier, and I think now's a good time to go into it, as to why this episode is called The Grind. And the reason behind that is that a lot of these teams, especially in the Premier League, but when it comes down to it, the minor league and the console league as well, have all been spending their time, well, grinding. That's exactly what they've been doing in the past. That's when their goal. They want to be number one, and they have to work hard to get there. And, you know, I say this, what I think is really funny, a great example of this, which I can't really get on camera because I don't know how exactly to showcase it, but there's player booths in the building, and I think Virtus Pro have actually spent more time in the studio than anybody who legitimately works here. Like, they are here probably 40, 50, maybe even longer hours a week. They have shown up every single morning, and they have been, you know, practicing. And that's just part of it, right? That's part of being in the Premier League, but that's part of being a professional player, is being able to put in that work outside of the time. Getting that practice in, especially when you're a team maybe like Virtus Pro, who wasn't quite happy with your first week results. You finally get that expertise, that experience together, and you get to sit around and just practice. You get to play the game you love, you get to do it on a LAN environment, you can do it with your friends who are now on your team, and do anything you can to excel. Of course, the clips I ended up getting were more showcasing Natus Vincere, which was a team that has been, again, not only at the top of the world before, but pretty much at the top of the PPL as well. I think they're number 2 currently, right behind Envy. Both of those two teams are the ones that you're looking to fight with each other. And the thing about Na'Vi, and the thing that's been coming through specifically here, is their variety. The fact that they come in, this was a week where, again, they had a substitute player playing for them. And the thing about this is that Creatives is so flexible that he can play pretty much anything they need. If they can get him comfortable, it's going to work out perfectly for him. If you get Phoenix on something that he's going to be comfortable on, then it's going to work well. But because of the flexibility, because of the practice that they have, Na'Vi have been able to kind of keep themselves up at the top every single step of the way. And a lot of that, again, is done behind the scenes. There was one conversation I remember having with them going into last year. They had just won a world championship, and they were saying it took them a max of 8 days before they started playing ranked again, before they were starting to look for scrims again, because they not only missed playing the game, but they were also in this experience of just we are the best, but we are going to get past. The same thing that Envy had coming into this. If you watched the documentary, they were talking about the fact that if they get complacent coming into this year, then that's how you get beat. The reason they were able to win last year is because they had that target painted on everybody else's back, right? They were just hungry for the victory, so they always were working to be a better version of themselves than they were the day before, and of course making sure that that translated to week by week, month by month, and then ideally, if they can keep it the way they want to, year by year. And so a lot of this is what's happening on behind the scenes, right? There's a lot of practice, but there's a few other things. Obviously, it helps your team synergy if you go and you're, maybe eating dinner together, you're hanging out, you're genuinely friends. You get that synergy built up everywhere. And of course, when you see teams that are sticking together, you look at Envy and Na'Vi coming into this year, you think these are the two teams that have been able to maintain a roster from their world championship, either making a couple of changes, Lazy coming in for Unbelievable for Na'Vi a little bit last year, but for the most part, kind of sticking together through all of the tough times and the good times. Whether or not they're winning, whether or not they're losing, they are making sure they stay as a complete unit. And so the question always does come down to when is it appropriate to make those swaps? When is it appropriate to maybe change some things? When you have someone who can come in and maybe make a difference. Zarini is not going to be staying with Na'Vi, as far as I know. As far as they know, Mutu is still going to be their main roster. But when you have a new player like this and you have a substitute come in, or maybe you are, at the end of a year and you're thinking about the fact that, let's say G2 hasn't been doing the way that you want to. Vex was a person who we got to speak with a couple of weeks ago on Esports Weekly, and finding a new roster is always one of the most difficult things to do. Obviously, Na'Vi have made their thing work, but other teams have kind of shifted it up. Virtus Pro is one of the teams I think that is going to be very interesting to continue watching as they build their team synergy, especially with how much time they've been spending in the office scrimming as much as they possibly can. So always be on the grind, always come through. Again, the minor league teams that you see are going through the same thing, but they're doing it at home. The console league teams are doing the same thing, but they're doing it at home. They are going to be the ones that rise to the top, and they're going to be the ones that keep control. But that's going to be it for just talking about what is the grind and what these players kind of go through behind the scenes. Now we can look at what you'll actually get to see in the scene, the things that are very forward-facing. That's a couple of matchups, or at least one matchup that we're going to be having this week. We have 4 matches this week for the BPL, and the one that I wanted to look at was Renegades, who has been doing incredibly well, versus Ninjas in Pajamas, who have done well, but they've only had the one set so far. They were able to take out Knights in week 1, and coming into this matchup, this is an interesting one because the Renegades, I think everyone, especially me, discounted at the very beginning. So we got to sit down and talk with everybody as to whether or not do you think the Renegades have what it takes. Based on these 2 weeks of play that we've gotten to see them, are they going to be able to take down NIP? Everyone said no. They said NIP are still one of the best teams. Because again, when you look at the things that are going well for the Renegades, I feel like NIP have been able to do it just as well, if not maybe even a little faster, because of the fact that they've been able to have that week off. They didn't have to worry about matches last week. They won their game against the Knights, and I think they're going to have a pretty good chance here against the Renegades as well. But I feel like that's going to be more up to, Shadow and Vocal and the rest of the crew to see if they can truly take down NIP, or if, Diggy Dog's going to have something to say about that. Believe we will be looking kind of towards the standings that we have for the PPL as well in just a second to be able to see where these teams are. Of course, a couple of them haven't been able to play yet, and by a couple I mean one. Space Station Gaming hasn't been able to quite play their games just yet, but the rest of them have all been able to get at least one in. Virtus.pro and NIP, I believe, played in week 1 and are going to be playing again this week, so you'll see them kind of hanging around. NIP up higher than Virtus.pro because Virtus.pro lost their, unfortunately, first set in the day. But Pittsburgh Knights down at the bottom, still needing a little bit of work. Renegades coming in 1-1. And of course, Envy, the only team as of right now that has gone lossless at 2-0, exactly where you'd expect them, but same plus-minus as Na'Vi, which is going to be, I think, the more interesting thing coming through. And NIP, again, the team you really want to come into. It was 6 whole games that they went to with the Pittsburgh Knights in that week 1, which was kind of surprising for, I think, everyone watching. I think they kind of expected that to maybe be a little bit of a faster set. And it ended up being, I think, maybe a little surprising for the team. Of course, we'll get a little bit more insight in on that with the way things are going, because we do have Diggy Dog coming in for an interview pretty soon here. And looking at the way the weeks have gone, the way the weeks will continue going, again, this is only going to be week 3 of the Premier League. For some people, that seems like it's going by pretty quickly. Man, we're already 3 weeks in. For others, you have to remember that there's still like 10 weeks after this that you have to go through. So the balancing end of it, everyone's still trying to find their home. But someone who found their home pretty early is Diggy Dog, who is now going to be sitting here on the desk with me. How are you doing, dude?
I'm good, thanks. How are you?
Pretty good. I'm actually really excited because the first thing that I think is really important to note is that you were the first player from Australia to join the Premier League before Kanga was able to kind of jump up and join in for this year. But now you're going up against all of your previous teammates. So, like, how does that kind of feel going into, like, these next few weeks?
I mean, it's a little nervous, like, I don't really want to lose them because, I left them and stuff, but, they're good players, so we'll see what happens.
So you're in a new, not necessarily a new team. You had a couple of changes, I want to say, going on. Last year was kind of like finding your home. Where is NIP going to sit? And you didn't quite make it to the top that you wanted to, but coming into this year, I think you guys are feeling a lot more confident. But you've only had the one matchup this year. You have a couple of games that are going to be coming up this week. Are you guys feeling more confident on LAN? Are you feeling really good about your matchups? Or are you still kind of looking at, until we beat Na'Vi, we don't know where we are?
I mean, we're preparing for RNG, but not so much Envy, because, Envy aren't that great, but...
yeah, just a world
I mean,
champion.
I think we are very confident on LAN. I think everyone was a little bit surprised by our first practice days when we got here and stuff. Like, we actually played really well, so I think we will be a top contender this year. So
well, I'm excited to see that because I feel like, again, you have one matchup coming up this week for Renegades, but obviously you're going to end up playing everybody in the league once. And when you went up against the Knights, everyone was kind of surprised because I think most people were thinking, okay, well, it's a best of 7. There's going to be 4 games. Like, you guys are going to win. It's going to be a 4-0, which I think was partially maybe overestimating NIP, but really underestimating the Knights. So in that matchup, like, what was it like when you're getting ahead, you're feeling pretty good, and then you realize, like, the Knights could feasibly take a win, maybe even, well, I guess in the end, 2 games off of you?
Well, honestly, I think we actually should have won 4-1. Stone Keep was kind of meh, but other than that, I think we threw Split Stone. I kind of played pretty bad this whole set, to be honest. So I think it should have been a little less closer, but it was a little scary when they took the Split Stone game as well, because then the Frozen Guard was kind of close, but then we pushed it, and after that, it was pretty much over. We got our engines rolling again.
Rolling. I could see you feeling confident at one point during that. And the one thing that, again, kind of caught our eye coming into this was that you've kind of had a role swap for your team. Like, we were looking at the drafts and I'm like, oh man, there's a Bomb King. That's going to be Diggy. Like, there's Blasters. And even after I saw you weren't playing those anymore, I'm still like, no, that has to be him though. So what was it like, I guess, like changing your team dynamic and for you changing your role coming into this split?
I mean, we decided to change some stuff up because we weren't getting the results that we really thought we should be getting. So at the time, there wasn't really any tank players and whatnot. And I mean, both Tanner and I didn't really mind switching to tank, to be honest, because I think the push tanks in this meta are, like, they can really make some big plays and stuff. So switching wasn't that bad. At first, I think I sucked pretty bad, but and I still think I got keep going, but until I'm there.
Well, hey, I mean, that's the whole reason that you're here. Again, I was actually just talking about the fact that there's so many players. Like, Virtus.pro has been here almost every single day, and seeing you guys, like, you recognize tomorrow's game day, you're coming in, getting scrims whenever you want. That's, like, my favorite quote. We were coming in to do the show, and I hear you in the background go, like, so do I have time for a scrim. Like, so you guys are full competitive-minded right now. Like, you're all in on the win. Yeah. So, I mean, what is it like, I guess, team dynamic? Like, is everyone feeling comfortable, or is there maybe a little stress to perform well?
I don't know if there's much stress, to be honest, because I think everyone is pretty comfortable, especially on the LAN, since we have been doing pretty well. So, yeah, I don't know. I think we'll be fine.
Feeling fine?
Yeah.
You're also one of the few teams very early on, obviously, with you coming from Australia, that was able to kind of establish that international dominance, I guess, that we have. Like, where it was just, it's not just all Europe, all North America. You had a little bit of flavors from everywhere. So, again, we have Kanga joining the league. We have you opposing them at this point. But do you think that having that insight, like coming from the Kanga scene, coming from the Australian scene, and joining NIP, did you bring something like kind of fresh for them? Or was it just get in, play the role they needed you to?
Well, at first, I think they did want that. But, yeah, like, we had Sheeper and Perto back then. We made some changes pretty quick, to be honest. But after those changes, I think I stood up a bit more and started talking more and leading a little bit more and stuff. So, yeah, I lost my train of thought there. But yeah, I've taken a bigger role up now in NIP, so I'm more of the mid-round shot caller and stuff. So
okay, so you get a little bit more of kind of, I guess, like the planning coming through. I want to ask, though, I think this is probably the most important question. Obviously, you're rooting for yourselves every single game, but when Kanga's playing and you're not playing with them, and it's not against you, right? When you're watching them, is there still a little bit of like rooting for the hometown boys?
Of course, of course. I love my boys in Kanga.
No, you've gotten a lot of grind for it. Of course, it's been a lot of fun, I think, being able to watch you flourish, being able to go from that, like, okay, you're playing in the global series every game. You guys did incredibly well on LAN, so we were all really excited to see you join up to NIP. And, of course, now we're really excited to see your continued success. But thank you so much for the interview, man. It was nice talking to you. And hopefully you enjoy the rest of your day. And good luck in your games this week.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, well, that's going to do it again for Diggy Dog. It was very, very pleasant being able to kind of hear about all of that. And now we're going to go into what I think a lot of people are expecting, the Premier League. So we've got to talk to Diggy Dog, we got to look a little bit into this, and we actually have a little bit something I think interesting going into it, but I'm going to be taking a quick break while we get Rain Day set up to come in and talk to me about the Premier League, so we'll be back right after this.
For me, moving to America is my dream come true, and I'm really happy about that. It's everything I ever wanted.
We are really happy for this opportunity, and it feels really good to be part of the PPL.
I'm really grateful for SSG and Hi-Res for giving me a chance.
SSG upset Europe, and they will move on.
They clean it up. To be an inspiration to all over the country, and people can see us, can watch us, and can inspire us.
Oh my word! Woo! Space Station are taking us higher.
It's amazing. It's amazing to be there, and I guess you guys will like it. So let's see, boys.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, there we go. Obviously, Rain Day now joining me on the desk.
I'm here!
And that is, I believe,
PPL
the first,
correspondent.
PPL correspondent. Make way.
Yes, make way. Scoot over a little bit.
I can. I have
okay,
I have some
we have
tape
shots.
that tells me where I have
I'm
to be.
sorry. That was crazy. I'm out of control.
I believe is the first technical roster preview or roster reveal for Space Station Gaming.
Yeah, that Ares guy seemed like a cool dude to watch.
It seemed like they might be pretty decent, right?
Yeah, I'd like to see them play. Are they going to be over here?
Yeah, they're going to be coming in. I believe, this is week 3?
Next week, we should be seeing them.
We finally get to see them on LAN again.
Yes, that is the word. So it's exciting. Space Station will be arriving. That was their reveal trailer. And, we really have missed these guys. They just have really been a part of, I think, the new forming of the PPL. This idea that Kanga, that Space Station, letting go of some of our old franchises who had been in here, the Fanatics and things like that, bringing these guys in who have already a strong brand but are almost building a little bit more and really like the heart and soul, I think, of the dynamic of the cross-cultural PPL, that's what I'm excited to start seeing happen here.
And I think it's, a lot of people, obviously fan favorites from Brazil,
Bom
because
dia!
they were so phenomenal every time they played in their global series.
But
between them and Kanga, both of them were teams that every time people watched them on LAN, they were like, dude, if you did this consistently, if you were playing like Envy and Na'Vi every week,
absolutely,
then your team goes from not only #1 in Brazil, but maybe #1 in the world, and that's where I think everyone's excited. Kanga's gotten to kind of showcase what they can do from week to week last week, but Space Station Gaming are going to be the first team to come in, kind of not necessarily in the middle exactly, it's still going to be more on the front end, but they're having their first match much later in the series than anyone else in the league.
Yeah, but I mean, the great thing is you're right. People have been really waiting to see them play, and there's some some all-stars. And Freeze God, it would be weird to not mention him coming back in as one of the premier players people will be looking out for. I'm excited to see the way Space Station can transition, though, because starting late's never easy, but I think that they've got enough of the opportunity to be able to go forward and make something happen here in the league.
Well, some guys, even though we got to hear, I guess, how excited SSG is to move to America. Some guys were already living here, and they're going to be still coming through. The Pittsburgh Knights we got to see a lot last week.
Yes.
And that's because they had their doubleheader. We got to see, and again, speaking of the fact that I just got to talk to Diggy Dog, they lost, unfortunately, to NIP in that first week, but they made some improvements. They were showcasing a lot more skill than I think a lot of people were expecting out of them at the very beginning, and they seem to be very ready to continue that path.
Well, Knights had a really tough week, and I think when you look at the grand scheme of the PPL, it's hard that they've played 4 games and taken 3 losses. We have to look at 2 of the teams they played, NIP and Na'Vi. You would expect them to be at the top. I think the biggest key, though, is that there's something I haven't seen yet, and it's how Rakata's management of this squad in-game as a DPS flex who has to be out doing his own thing can help to be an in-game leader for this team. Unlike the way that we normally see Cuscutie taking that role on. Now, Cus may be very active in the comps. We don't know. But what's difficult is definitely having to take these 1v1 duels and then say, hey, guys, let's push, or let's back off. You don't know. You can't see. That's why the support typically does that for the team. That's why, Vex does that a lot for his team in Virtus Pro. It's an interesting dynamic. There's no doubt this guy can aim lights out. He's way taller than we thought he was, actually, so that's another good bonus. That's
it's
great.
That extra arm length that actually gives you the aim.
Yeah, if you want to throw, a couple inches my way, feel free, buddy. I'm happy to, 5'11" will look good on me, okay? But I'm just saying, Rakata, at the end of the day, is a great player. This team has a lot to look forward to, but it's a tough start. And losing to Kanga last week as well was a very big morale shift because they did not want to lose to a former teammate in Evil Eye and Cuss going up against each other. But that's a team that's more competing around the area where they are right now.
Yeah, and that was actually, I think, where a lot of the highlights were. I think it was Na'Vi first, and it's like, no one expects you to beat Na'Vi. At this point, even with a sub, Na'Vi is just that upper echelon of team. They are so high up there that you have to be able to take them down. And when you get that opportunity, when you finally do that, then you can kind of shift your target. It's like, well, we did that. Now we have to take on Envy.
Yeah.
But when you're, like you said, going up against someone like Kanga, and maybe you're the throner, there were a lot of portions during last week where it felt like he just couldn't play his game anymore. He was kind of getting forced out of his comfort zone.
One of the things that it's telling, right? It's that Dethroner, in my opinion, has to work through a lot of the community and people in the scene kind of doubting him. But he's continuously just risen to be, now he's in the PPL, and now he's on a team that can go anywhere depending on there. So one of the best things about him and the idea of his playstyle is he's willing to improve, he's willing to hear criticism, which is one of the things that stops so many people, right? When they say, oh, you're bad, people say, okay, I'll give up. No, he's not doing that, and he's continuing to grow. I think he gets way more flack than he should be getting, as he did a great job for this squad. It's not easy to play against a coordinated team, and where Pittsburgh maybe fell off, it wasn't at the front line.
Nope.
In my opinion, it was not in the front line. I think that they need to find consistent damage flex and greater team coordination on the draft. That's where Kanga, I think, just stepped it up. Pittsburgh were a step behind, and that's Kanga's strength, being able to prepare, have Hades, and just know what they want to do to put somebody in a very difficult position.
Well, I think I'm excited to see them play again because, again, much like you said, I think everybody on that team, Dethroner specifically, but I think all of them are open to that constructive criticism and that goal of, we just want to be better. Like, that's all we want. Like, yes, it sucks to lose,
what you got to do, man.
They seem to have replaced that, oh, we're going to get down on ourselves and, feel bad about the fact that we lost and just go with, well, we need to turn that energy into something positive. Like, take that feeling and turn it into the grind. Take it into scrims and
100%.
get yourself better. And, of course, we got to look at a couple of the matchups. I don't think the Knights are playing at all this week because I think we have VP, we have
No,
Envy,
they need a break.
we
They
have
need a
NIP.
reset.
Yeah, they got 2 big sets last week, so they get a little bit of a break this week. But Envy is going to be coming back. They've only played 2 in week 1. They looked really good.
This first
but
matchup.
I haven't seen them as much as Virtus Pro.
Yeah, this first matchup's great. and actually, I think they're right around the same amount of play because Virtus Pro have only played 1 game and lost, and that was against Pittsburgh. That's the only win that they had. But that was an emotional victory for Pittsburgh because Cuss was going up against Doe, his old teammate from the beginning of Paladins esports history, and Vex, who had really worked with his squad well to start bringing things together in a new energy in G2, and now that all split. So it was very emotional, and I hope that there's more to this team than being able to win on the emotional matches because there's not a lot of emotion here with Envy. Envy are just world class. They don't treat you any different than Na'Vi. They play their absolute best. They will 4-0 you, 4-0 you, and 4-0 you again. So the way that Virtus Pro now have to adjust is knowing that, yes, we had a loss, but these guys have probably been in the office more than any of us combined this entire week. If you don't know, they have been scrimming. They have been practicing. Hakate out there passionately speaking about, I think, where they're going to go to lunch. I mean, there's passion around this team to get things right because they know what they have to do tomorrow, and tomorrow is a big day against Envy.
And, there's actually, I think, a lot of ties between, if you look at Puleule and Hakate right now, and you look at SSG, right? That video talking about the fact that they're really excited to be coming to America, but, I mean, Hakate, Puleule, like, they're here right now. Like, they have that feeling, too. And that's something that's just, you're going from a global series, from a different country, and now you're moving to the Premier League. You're moving up here. So, like you said, a lot of energy coming down. So, Virtus Pro, I don't know if they can beat Envy, but I know that they can look a lot better this time around.
I think because it's their only matchup, I think they have to try to beat Envy. It's going to be tough. I don't think. I mean, it's going to be very hard to do. Who would bet against them? But I think if Virtus Pro come out strong tomorrow, it would be a hell of a set.
Well, I'm interested to see how they end up doing because they're my team, right? They're the team that if I'm looking at, I'm like, I'm very excited. I was excited to see the roster, and I'm excited to see them play together. That first week was a rough loss for them.
Yeah.
But seeing how they go in the future is going to be big. Envy, though, does have 2 games this week.
They do.
And one of them is obviously against Virtus Pros, we just mentioned, but the other one's going to be up against NIP.
Yep.
And this, I think, is going to close the gap a little more. Like, Virtus Pro's kind of a question mark. I don't know how they're going to look after week 1, but NIP has always been kind of closer to the top.
Yeah, Envy and NIP should be a heck of a set because these 2 teams coming from different backgrounds in Europe and North America, and you have to look at also the travel situation happening for NIP as well, having, I believe, no games last week, so being able to kind of come back in here and be in the fray of things. So it's interesting how Envy is going to manage not only playing against VP, but then NIP. Overall, NIP have looked one of the stronger teams in the first week when we saw them play that I think is in the PPL right now. So you would be a wise man to bet on them having a strong performance again. The big matchup for me is going to be, can Diggy Dog find success continuously without getting pressured enough by Rock Monkey? That kind of hit scan pressure that he can bring on the Leon, on the Cassie, can it allow Dig to flex on Drogos, on Bomb King? Will they have a ban strategy to put him off his guard? Because so much of this NIP team is Diggy kind of getting the room he needs to really be the carry.
And they've been very flexible, as we saw in week 1. I'm really interested to see what they're going to be able to bring this week because that is, again, we only got to see them really play the one set. We've only seen the 6 games of NIP so far this split. So there's a lot more, I think, that is going to be able to come through. And, I mean, just looking at all of the games that we've had coming into the past and bringing them into this, obviously the other team that is playing this week is going to be Renegades. We have Virtus Pro, Envy, and NIP that we've mentioned. We got to talk a little bit about Renegades earlier because they're going up against NIP. But they're also going to be playing Virtus Pro this week. And this is the one that I think is going to be a little closer. And I honestly don't know which way this is going to go. And it seems like we were all leaning one way except for Nick. But admittedly, you could flip a coin and have the right answer here.
You really could. The reason I give this one is because as hard as they're going to fight tomorrow, it's hard to imagine Envy losing to Virtus Pro. And I think that Friday when they play against Renegades, they're going to have to win. They will be 0-2. Right? Renegades already have a win. This team is going to feel like we need this victory, and we will stay up all night. We will study. We'll do whatever it takes to be able to make sure we are not 0-3 at the end of this week. That's why I personally am trending towards them, because these real-world factors are mattering much more than ever now that we're in person here on LAN.
I'm honestly I'm in the same vein, but when I'm looking at it, like, it's when I remember what Hecate and the crew did when they were like, man, we lost that the very first set they played in the One World Championship when they were on Nocturnes. The next night, they were like, yeah, we stayed up super late last night studying whatever we could about that team to make sure that we could take them down or take anyone down to fix what we did wrong. And, of course, like we've mentioned, I think at this point several times today, they've been here every single day. Like they are on the grind, and I'm excited to see them.
Will Loki be around as well? I mean, will Shadow still be playing? Will we see Vocal pop off the way that he did last week, looking like one of the best players, if not the best DPS in the entire PPL? It's going to be exciting, I think, just to see back-to-back performances from Hecate, from, Alex. Can he keep up that performance? Can we see Rock Monkey do his thing? Can we see, obviously, Vocal do his thing? It's going to just be lights-out aiming. This is actually the week you want to do the aim like a god kind of segment that you did last week.
So many people, I think, that are coming in, not only this week, but just in the league in general. I think every single team has someone where it's just like, man, that guy's just so good at shooting.
We get back to back to back, and in each game. It's beautiful.
Yeah, it's going to be awesome. And again, you saw, if you were watching that, you saw it correctly, starting at 1 p.m. tomorrow and 1 p.m. on Friday. Both of those sets will be kicking off right around there. So you'll be able to get a little bit of lunch in your stomach and then sit down and watch the PPL for the rest of the day. But hey, man, thank you.
Or some breakfast if you're on the West Coast.
Yeah, I guess it depends on where you are.
There you go.
But thanks again for coming in, talking to me about the Premier League and being able to go through this week's matches. Everything that is coming up for the next week in Paladins is going to be incredible. Obviously, the Premier League is where our eyes are turned, since that is going to be immediately tomorrow and Friday. But of course, again, 11 a.m. Monday and Tuesday, you get the Console League and the Minor League in their respective slots. A lot that has been going on. A lot that has been changing. Week 3 of the PPL, Week 6 coming into next week of the PCL and PML. Teams have shifted, players have shifted, meta has shifted. Nothing's really set in stone as of yet, and I don't think it's ever going to get there. But thank you, everyone, for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this episode. Hopefully it gave you some insight, and hopefully we'll see you tomorrow, same time that this started, 1 p.m., as we go live for the Paladins Premier League. My name's been Gormizer. This has been Esports Weekly. We'll talk to you next time.